Now, I'm about to turn 30 years old, and here are a few things that I wish someone told me when I was 18, 19, or 20, just starting my adult life, that honestly would have given me such a backdoor, such a cheat code, such a step up based on where I am now. So the first thing is that your 20s are for experimentation. You don't need to know where you're going to go in all facets of your life, okay? It's totally fine if you want to start a new job, and then start another new job, and then start another new job. It's totally cool if you think your career is going one direction, and then it goes to a completely different direction. In your 20s, this is fine. You might think you like a certain kind of music, right? That might seem inconsequential, or there might be something bigger where you think you might like a certain type of person in a relationship or just as a friend, and it might turn out that you need a completely different person that actually suits who you are as you grow up and evolve. Really, your 20s, you want to feel like you're an adult because you just left high school, you're about to go to college, or maybe just start a job, but the reality is you're still a kid in a lot of ways, and this is something that I didn't really find out until I turned 28, 29, and now I know, yeah, you're still learning a lot of things, and so use your 20s to experiment. That's totally fine. And if you just listen to someone who says you need to make a decision of exactly where you're going to be when you're 50, in your 20s, you are going to waste time. I'm telling you, you're going to be ahead of so many people if you actually just allow yourself to experiment without judgment. Try new stuff. And those who judge you for trying new stuff before you know if you like it, honestly, probably aren't meant to be your friends anyway. And this brings me to my second point. The second point is about skills and relationships. In your 20s, try and get as many skills, garner as many skills as you can in as many different ways. Now, here's the funny thing. When you are in like high school or beginning of university, so many people care about your like hard skills or like what you're doing in terms of like academics or your job or whatever. A lot of the skills that actually make the world go round, you'll find out as you get older, are the soft skills. Are you able to work with people? Do people actually like you? Do you give good advice? When someone's having a hard time, do they want to come to you? Again, if I knew this when I was earlier on in my life, I probably would have had way more advantages, because now I see that the people that are in the highest places are the people who just knew the right people and used their soft skill to get there. It doesn't really matter if you graduate with a certain degree or a certain grades. It really doesn't. If you just build the skills, especially soft skills, you'll be blown away. And what is this going to help you do? Well, it's going to help you have better and better relationships, which again, yes, romantic relationships is very, very important, but other relationships are too. Again, this is like networking and stuff like that. I'm so happy that I took the time to network when I was younger. But honestly, if I had realized that if I had just focused on developing my soft skills, what people actually like to be around, like a guy that people like to be around, I would have been able to shoot way past where I am now. I'm going to give you a short little story to explain this. When I was in high school, I thought for a long time that I wanted to be a lawyer. Turns out I didn't end up being a lawyer, okay? But I wanted to be a lawyer. And so when I met this one guy who worked, he was actually one of the hiring agents, one of the main hiring people, and one of the main people responsible for hiring talent at a huge Toronto law firm, which if you don't know, Toronto is the biggest city in Canada, okay? It's like the New York of Canada, okay? I asked him, what should I do to get hired at a law firm like yours? Like what skills do I need? You know, what grades do I need? Extracurriculars, etc. And he said, I normally ask one question in my interviews. And I was like, okay, what's that question? And he said, do you like baseball? And I was like, of course I was confused. I was like, listen, you're one of the biggest law firms. I hear about going to law school to get to these big law firms. Why would I care about baseball? Why do you care about baseball, right? And he's like, look, because if you're sitting in front of me, I'm betting that you already have the credentials to do so, right? You probably already passed the tests. You probably already went to the school, blah, 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 blah. But if I'm going to work with you for 8, 10, 12 hours a day, I like baseball. So I need to know that you like baseball. Otherwise, I don't want to work with you, right? And that little point right there showed me that I was like, okay. And by the way, I learned this too late. I learned this when I was like 24, 25 or something. But if you know this at 18, 19, 20, that it's really about getting to know the right people and then finding out what they like, develop the soft skills then to massage yourself into people's lives, people will give you opportunities that you do not expect. So in your 20s, get really, really, really good at getting to know people and understanding what makes them tick and what they like. It's really, really powerful. But the next tip that I want to tell you, and something that I wish I knew, is to not compare yourself to others. Now, this sounds like such a gushy sort of woo-woo soft thing to say, don't compare yourself to others, right? You might be a really competitive person and you might think, why can't I compare myself to others? It motivates me. And that's totally fine. But here's the thing. Most people in their 20s are not consuming content like this. Most people in their 20s don't actually care about doing huge things in their life. They care about making it look like they're doing huge things. Now, what do I mean? I mean buying those crazy like fashion brand or whatever things that make you look, again, like you have all this money that you usually don't. So when you compare yourself to others, normally what you're doing is you're getting into this game of, oh, I'm going to try and beat you at your own game. I'm going to try and wear the Gucci t-shirts and drive the Lamborghini. And by the way, these things aren't bad necessarily, but I'm just saying that if you want your life to really take off in your 30s and 40s, et cetera, the majority of your life, then in your 20s, you need to not compare yourself to others. Or if you do, make sure you're making these the right comparison. Don't actually care about what people are wearing or what people are doing. Who cares? This person got, okay, they got straight A's at a crazy university in mathematics. It's like, okay, great. But do you know how many people, and by the way, not bashing any particular field of study, I don't know many people that really went super hard in mathematics that either stuck with it or were happy that they stuck with it. So when you compare yourself to others, especially your peers in that sort of age group, you are wasting time, because all of the money that you could have taken, for example, to put into yourself, or time you could have put into working on yourself, building these skills we talked about. If I had done this personally, then I wouldn't have tried to like keep up with the Joneses and trying to look so good and try and do all these things where I was like trying to wear certain brands or spend certain money. It's a waste of time, complete and utter waste of time. But you know what isn't a waste of time is this next tip I'm going to give you. Healthy habits. Develop them early, because the reality is this: the habits that you set in your 20s will determine who you are for the rest of your life. Okay, so understand that having a bedtime, getting up and like having a morning routine, doing things like going to the gym, meditating, these things that really work on your brain and work on your mind, work on your body, these are super important. You might be in college having the time of your life, and that's awesome. But do not forget that these things are absolutely critical. How many people do you know who turn like 30 or 40 even, and they're just miserable? And also they look terrible, right? They look like they're exhausted. They look super unhealthy. They look like they're on the verge of death. Never found the time to build these habits. In your 20s, when you're 18, 19, 20, and early 20s, you can build these habits because you have so much time. You might think you're busy with all your studies and whatever, but you can manage your time such that you can have these healthy habits, and then your life will absolutely change going forward, and no one can stop you. Because most of the people who slow down at 26, 27, 28, because they're drinking every single day and they just haven't taken care of themselves for years, they eventually can't keep up with you. And so whatever you end up doing, they can't keep up. And this brings me to my fifth point. Take smart risks. Nobody is depending on you. When you're 19, 20, right? No one's depending on you the way they might be when you're 35, 45, and you have a child, you have a family, you have other people, your parents are now getting to an age where you need to take care of them, and without you, they're going to be in a really difficult spot maybe. No one is depending on you. So take smart risks. It's not that big of a deal, honestly, if your bank account goes to about zero, or in some cases below zero, right? If you're lucky enough to not have student debt or any other kind of debt, it's okay to take on some risk if it's smart, right? What do I mean by smart? If you have a passion or an idea or a business idea, right, that you want to try it, especially during this time. Because you know what's going to happen if you don't? You're going to keep procrastinating, and you're going to end up like one of those people who are in a job where they hate it and they hate their life. How many people at different places, just look around in your environment, right? How many people can you talk to and you look at them and you think, if I asked them what they wanted to be, like when they were younger, what they wanted to be when they grew up, would many of them say where they are now? Right? How many people could you essentially shatter by asking, hey, I know right now you're stocking this shelf or you're packing this bag or whatever it is, right? And you might be in your 40s. B, what dream did you give up on to do this instead? Right? And you know why that is? Because so many people did not take smart risks when they were younger. They thought, later. Well, I'm telling you right now, you're in your 20s, especially early mid 20s. If you have an idea of something you want to do, now is the time to do it. It's not later once you have a bit more money and you have some extra time and blah, 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 blah. It's right now. Take smart risks. This includes going to ask the girl out or going to ask the guy out. This includes doing all of these things. Anything that you're like, listen, what is worst case scenario? If worst case scenario for you is you get a rejection, right? In the case of asking someone out, let's say, or asking for a promotion or something like that, if worst case scenario is they say no, then absolutely do it. Okay, absolutely do it, because the upside might be your whole life changing. Now, when it comes to a business and money and stuff like that, if you have an idea, again, I used to always think, I really did when I was 22, 23, I used to always think to myself, okay, when I'm 29, I'll start the business, or, when I'm 30, I'll start the business, whatever. But what happens is life gets more and more difficult. People start looking at you like, yo, you're supposed to have a more sort of stable job. Why is it that you still want to start a company or start a business like this dream? When are you going to let go of this, man? That sort of thing starts to happen. And for some people, that does weigh on them to a point where they actually give up. And so when you're young, take these smart risks. And I'm not going to let you wiggle out of this by thinking, oh, well, I'm only 18, but I'm only 19, I'm only 20. Look, these are the exact people I'm talking to. If you're a little bit older than that, I'm talking to you even more so. So please take smart risks. It is so important. Okay. Now, the last tip that I wish I had that I want to give you is that growth is more important than status. Okay. It doesn't matter what grades you're getting in comparison to your friends. What matters is your dream along the path of getting good grades. If you need to get good grades to go where you want to go, then okay, that's important, right? But as long as you're growing and you're getting better and better, that is the main thing. The reason why is, again, When you get into your 30s and 40s, you're going to get stuck in your ways where it can be kind of difficult. If in your 20s you cultivate this idea that growth is important, that I need to keep growing in everything I do. Okay, if I go to the gym regularly, I want to gradually lift more or build more muscle or run faster or run for longer or whatever it is, right? If it's business, who cares if I failed 8 times? Growth is getting on the horse that 9th time, trying again, because eventually if you keep banging your head against a wall, the wall will break. This is a growth mindset, right? If you have a fixed mindset, especially when you're young, it's going to tell you, oh, you can't improve, you can't do anything. But here's the thing, right, is the majority of what you do when you're young, when you're in the age that you are right now watching this video, these are the things that will compound into the great thing that you are going to become. These are the Elon Musks, the Jeff Bezos. Do you think Jeff Bezos started his company and then in 3 days it just like blew up to what Amazon is now? No, it didn't. Obviously, it took time for it to grow. Now, that wouldn't have worked out if when he was 20, 30 years younger, he didn't have in his mind that he wanted to grow and growth wasn't the main thing. If that wasn't the case, Amazon wouldn't be where it is right now. And so whatever it is that you're doing, do you play guitar? Do you study a language? I don't know what it is you do. In all of those things, keep in mind that growth is what's important. Status does not matter because oftentimes you will go for status at the cost of growth. Right? You might have this money that you could throw into this like business idea that we talked about in the past, right? Or buying language lessons or guitar lessons, again, whatever it is. But instead, you spent it on the Gucci t-shirt so you could go to the club and like look good for a night when, newsflash, no one actually cares. No one cares. So status is not that important. What you'll find, just like high school, just like when you're in high school, everything only matters to you. The only thing that matters to you is that people care, right? That's because that's all you have, right? You haven't done anything with your life. All you have is people care. They think you're attractive or think you're cool or whatever it is, think you're smart, whatever it might be. But status doesn't matter because often you're going to spend the time and the resources, the money, all of that stuff in getting this status that is going to disappear. And this is why there's this term peaked in high school, right? They have this like status. People have this like status that eventually disappears because they focus entirely on the now, getting their status as good as it can be. When really, if they're focused on the future, focused on growth, things will actually turn out the way they want it to be. These are people that, again, peaked in high school. So honestly, these are all things that I wish I knew when I was younger. And I'm approaching 30, right? In weeks and days, I'm going to be 30 years old. And this is me speaking to my younger self, speaking to you, that if you are just starting your adult life, keep these things in mind and you will skyrocket to exactly where you want to be.